G'day legends. Today we're going to take a look at a super powerful tool, multiband compression. And if you haven't used multiband compression very much in your productions, it may seem a little overwhelming because there's so many parameters and so many options and ways of using it. It can seem kind of daunting. So what I want to do is show you some of my favorite ways of using multiband compression, things that pop up pretty regularly, so that you can get a better understanding of how to apply it to your mixes and start using it. So the first one we're going to take a look at is using multiband compression as a way of taming harsh frequencies. So I've got a pretty chill track here and it's got some solo violin, and at times the violin comes across a little bit shrill, but at other times it sounds fine. So what I don't want to do is cut a whole bunch of high end out of the violin sound, because at times it'll sound fine, but then at other times it'll sound too dull. So using multiband compression, we can get a bit of control over this. So at the end of my plugin chain, I have FabFilters Pro MB, and I've just set it up so there's one high band shelf. So in Pro MB, you just click up the top to add a band, and all I've done is clicked over here to create a high shelf, and we have it in compressed mode. I brought the range down around 7 dB with a fast attack, fast release. I want this to react quickly and grab a hold of any harsh frequencies straight away. And then we just play with the threshold to get this reacting at the right time. So have a listen to what the violin sounds like without Pro MB turned on. So really nice, warm, beautiful sound at the start, but then towards the end of the take, it gets a little bit shrill as the violin goes up a little bit higher in register. So what I want to do is grab a hold of those frequencies and tuck them down a little bit so we keep that kind of warm feel the whole way through. So let's turn this on and then have a look at what's happening. So how nice is that? It made the take sound really consistent in tone, and those frequencies that really jump out up here around kind of like 10K got tucked down nicely so they weren't coming out in an abrasive way. So you can hear it just sweetens up the high end, makes it sound nice and warm because we don't have those frequencies poking through as much. So that's one really powerful way of being able to use multiband compression to just tackle a frequency range that's causing a bit of problems. So for this next example, we're going to take a look at how we could use multiband compression in a similar way to tame a harsh vocal sound. Now, not that this vocal is harsh in any way, but I just thought I'd show you on this how we could make the vocal sound a little bit warmer and rein in some of those frequencies that may be perceived as harsh.
I was running every red light, blowing through every stop sign. Never thought that I'd be slowing down.
Okay, so that's our vocal. And I actually like the way this vocal sounds, but I just thought I'd show you how we could tame some presence if we felt like it was too much and we want to make the vocal sound a little bit thicker and warmer. So a usual kind of problem area in vocals is anywhere between like 2 to 5K. You can get a lot of harshness in this region, and we're just going to find that spot where we can tuck down some of these frequencies and make the vocal sound a little bit richer. So all I've done is create a single band, kind of made it fairly tight, made the range quite deep around 10 dB, and then we're going to play with the threshold to get it reacting. And then a fairly fast attack, we'll go over around 6% and similar with the release. And then let's try and dial this in.
I was running every red light, blowing through every stop sign. Never thought that I'd be slowing down.
So that's pretty much it, around 3.7K. There's this sort of frequency in Jake's voice, which is a little bit bitier sounding. And so we can tuck that back and make the vocal sound a bit thicker if we want.
I was running every red light, blowing through every stop sign. Never thought that I'd be slowing down.
And like before, this is the last plugin in the vocal chain. So at the moment, this is on the vocal bus at the end of all the processing. This is being applied to all of the vocals. You could use it on individual vocal channels, but just for this example, I put the plugin right at the very end, just so we can get that really nice polished sound.
I was running every red light, blowing through every stop sign. Never thought that I'd be slowing down.
And that's how simple it is. And you could do the same if the vocals were muddy. You could find a muddy frequency and compress that and make the vocals have a bit more presence and clarity. So it goes both ways. It doesn't have to just be taming harsh frequencies. We can use this to tame muddiness as well and make things sound a little bit clearer. So another awesome way of using multiband compression on vocals is as a de-esser. So I know there's plenty of great de-esser plugins out there, but if you have a multiband compressor, particularly like Pro and B, it's such a fast reacting compressor, you can use this to de-ess your vocals. And I do this pretty often. So under the presets, vocals, a de-esser, it loads up this setting. And so all it is a high shelf, fast attack, fast release, and then they've got the range set to -6. We're gonna drop this down a little bit further because these vocals need a little bit of love, and about 12 dB. And then we've got it set to free in the expert tab over here. That means we get this little band that appears, and that's gonna be what triggers the compression. So we can really dial this in to react only on the S's and T's and the sibilances coming through. So once again, I've got this at the very end of the vocal chain, just using it as a last bit of de-essing on the vocals to make them sound nice and smooth. Have a listen to what this sounds like.
Trials can often seem like a stress machine that can soon replace your joy with jealousy. Trials can often seem like a stress machine that can soon replace your joy with jealousy.
So as you can hear, that's super effective. And having these parameters here lets you dial this in to the T, which is so good. Whereas sometimes when you're just using a de-esser plugin, you're just taking a bit of a stab in the dark and hoping that the de-esser reacts where you want it to. Whereas with this kind of thing, you can set it to react exactly where you want it to. And the thing that's really special about FabFilter Pro and B as a multiband compressor is it's super fast. So for this next example, I'm gonna show you how we can use a multiband compression to even out a performance, which is typically what we're looking to do with a compressor. Say if you got a really dynamic vocal, we'll put compression on it to rein in that dynamic range and make it all a little bit more even so we can put it in the mix and make it sit in there a little bit better. So for this example, I've got some drums tracked by a bit of a metal prog band, and I just did a bit of a basic mix with some stock plugins while they're tracking. And we're gonna focus on the kick because the way he plays is a little inconsistent at times. He hits the kick a little bit harder and then a little bit softer. And so it makes it hard to EQ the kick because you want to EQ it to bring out sort of that bright, attacky top end so it cuts through the mix, but then every now and then a really hard hit comes through and it just sounds really bitey and aggressive, and then it goes back to being a little bit more chill. So what we want to do is try and even out that performance because we can't fix it with EQ. So these are the drums. So you can hear every now and then there's a kick that comes through a little bit harder sounding, and I'll pull up the multimeter so you can have a look and you can see what's happening with the EQ of this. So he's accenting a certain beat every now and then on the kick, but it does make it hard to get the kick to sound consistent in the mix. So I'm going to show you how we use multiband compression to kind of even this out a little bit. So all that's on the kick is some EQ, a little bit of compression and a gate. Now what we're going to do is add this to the end of the chain, and we've got two bands set up. Our first band is a bell at 3.7K, and I've got the range set to 7.6 dB, and then I've played with the threshold so it's kind of almost reacting all the time, like it might be moving a little bit, and then on the really aggressive hits, it's gonna pull down this frequency range because around here is where the kick sounds really hard and harsh, and every now and then that really hard hitting kick comes through and we're gonna tuck that back a little bit. Fast attack, fast release. So this is where the fun's happening. We've got a second band, a high shelf from 7.6K. We're boosting up 6 dBs, but then we also have the range set to -6 dBs. And then we've basically got it in those de-esser settings again. Fast attack, fast release, and we've got it in free mode, so it gives us our little band that sets the detector. We've got our little detector band set over our first band where those harsh kicks are coming in. So anytime a really aggressive kick comes in, both these bands are going to compress at the exact same time. So we should end up with a fairly smooth sounding performance. And the reason I'm boosting that high end is I want a little bit more tick and brightness out of the kick, but I don't want to bring out any more of that upper mid range. I want a bit more air from the kick. So it sounds a lot smoother and a lot more polished now. So it is a bit of a rough kind of drum mix at the moment, but you get the idea. That's one way of fixing that kind of problem and getting a smoother performance. So while we're hearing some drums, let me show you another trick that I like to use multiband compression on, and that is dealing with cymbal bleed. And I've shown this a couple of times on the channel, but while we're doing a video that's focused on multiband compression, let's just consolidate it all and put all the ideas in here. So let's check out this section here. There's some washy hi-hats. There's a bit of cymbal bleed going on. So it sounds pretty good. We've got an expander on there that's cutting out a bit of cymbal bleed already. If we take the expander off, it sounds like this. Now let's leave it like that so we can really showcase how this works. We're going to put Pro and B as our very first plugin in our chain on the snare. Now you can put this anywhere. You can experiment using it after EQ, after your gate. See where it works best for you. I typically like it as a first plugin. Now we're going to set up a high shelf, and we kind of set it to around 2.2K. That's kind of like the sweet spot, I think. And then we have it on a fast attack, fast release, and in the expert tab we have it on free mode, just like the de-esser settings, but this time we're focusing our detector on the mid-range. Now the big difference is we're in expand mode instead of compress mode, so you need to have a multiband compressor that can do an expand mode. What this means is the threshold is actually going to trigger this to go up rather than down. So we're pulling down about 12 dBs of high shelf, but anytime that snare hits and triggers the threshold, it's going to let that frequency range back through for a really quick amount of time because we've got the fast attack, fast release, and then it's just going to drop it back down and we're going to get rid of all the cymbal bleed. It's pretty cool. Does an amazing job of it. So let's have a listen to what it sounds like if we add the expander gate back in afterwards. So it makes a big difference, just cleans up all of that cymbal bleed, gets you a nice, tight, crisp sound. So you can see multiband compression is like a Swiss Army knife. It's just so good at fixing a lot of problems and just making things sound a lot better. Now another fun trick that I like to do with multiband compression, and another thing that I've shown on the channel before, so bear with me if you've seen this one. So we're going to sidechain our snare to some multiband compression on our room mics in expander mode, so that every time the snare hits, it's going to open up the frequency range, let the room sound through a little bit more, and then tuck it back down. So essentially we're making the rooms kind of pop more on the snare hits. And then if we add a little bit of reverb after it, it helps carry the sound a little bit so it doesn't get as choked. So have a little listen to what's going on here. So you can see every time the snare hits, it's opening up. Let's get our snare in the mix. And then what I like to do is add some reverb after this. Helps make it sound a little bit more natural, so it's not just kind of getting ducked down, but we get that hit of the snare with the room mics, and then it lets the sustain come through with the reverb while it tucks down everything else. And then you can add a little bit of EQs and compression after that as well to really make it pop. So it sounds pretty cool. It just makes the snare sound a little bit more exciting, gives it a little bit of extra energy. Pretty cool. As this kind of like gated snare sound to it, which is really fun. And so to make this happen, we just need to set up a single band that goes across the whole frequency range. In expert mode, we have it set to external, and then on our sidechain, we set it to whatever we want to trigger it. So for this, I've got the snare sample, snare shot, dial in this threshold so that when a snare hits, it opens this up. I've got a medium attack. I don't want it to grab it immediately. I'm happy for the snare transient to hit and then for this to open up. And then we've got a slower kind of release so it's not like as choppy dropping back down. Just lets it breathe a little bit, which sounds really cool. And so another great way that we can use multiband compression and sidechaining within a mix is to sidechain to a sound that's taking up a lot of space to make room for something else. So for example, let's say if we sidechained our vocals to the lead guitars in this mix. So it kind of tucks down a bit of a frequency range that might be masking the vocals a little bit. So I'm going to load up Pro and B on the lead guitar bus. So this is where all our lead guitars are. And we're going to focus a band around the mid-range, maybe around like 800 hertz. This is a pretty common area to kind of build up and sort of clutter over our vocals, kind of in these lower mids to mid-range. We're going to do a fast attack and a fast release. Maybe set the range to around 3 dBs. We don't want it to duck away heaps so it feels like all of a sudden everything gets sucked away. We want it to be kind of subtle. I'm going to set it to external mode on the expert tab. And then up here, we're going to come up to bus. And we're going to set the bus 7, which is where all our vocals are. Now, let's play our chorus real quick.
Got it made, this life I'm living. No, I gotta give it up to my saving grace. Keep my world spinning, this little white picket love.
I'm going to put it around 1K actually, and set it to around 4 dBs. I'm going to put this over our lead guitars and our acoustic guitars because there's a bunch of guitar stuff going on. And let's have a listen to how this helps the vocals.
I've got it made, this life I'm living. No, I gotta give it up to my saving grace. Keep my world spinning. I've got it made, this life I'm living. No, I gotta give it up to my saving grace. Keep my world spinning. This little white picket.
So the vocals sitting in the mix pretty good anyway, but you can hear it does make it a little bit clearer. So if you had a mix where things were a little bit too busy going on, this is a great way of pushing some of those frequencies down out of the way to make room for the vocals. And as soon as the vocals stop, it all comes back and you're none the wiser that you've just actually made space in the mix and your attention's drawn to the vocals and then your attention's drawn back to the lead without actually kind of having to just statically cut an EQ to make space. So probably not the best example because the vocals were sitting in there pretty good, but you get the idea. It's just a great way of pushing some stuff out of the way. And if you're interested, I have a pop country mix course on that particular song that we just listened to. Check out the description link below, head over to my website and you'll be able to find it over there. And in the course, we deconstruct that whole song, go through all the processing for the entire mix so you can see exactly how I mixed it to get it to sound that way. So another great way of using multiband compression, and a really common one at that, is using it on your mix bus or in the mastering stage to even out the performance of the mix. So if things are a little bit too heavy in the low end, we can compress those lows and get them sounding a little bit tighter. Or if we've got too much brightness coming through, we can compress the highs and get a bit of a smoother sound happening. Using multiband compression on the mix bus is a really powerful tool. I don't typically recommend using multiband compression while you're mixing. Save it for when you're finished and then use it there to try and fine tune things. It's not really that great to mix into a multiband compressor. I think it creates more problems than it fixes. So I've got a different plugin for this one. We've got the SSL G3 Multi-Bus Comp. This is basically like the G comp on 3 different bands, so it's pretty cool.
Cause I'm awake with my eyes still shut. To every small thing, this world fucks me up. So I remind myself to blink and take a breath before you think that this is easy.
So you can hear this is really making the mix punch nicely. So I've used it in a way to tighten up the low end, make the top end sound a little bit snappier, a little bit more present, just overall make the mix punch a little bit better. So I've got a slow attack on the low end, so I don't really want to clamp down on it too fast with a fairly fast release, but it's not like pumping kind of thing. And then low ratio, 2:1, couple of dBs at that, just to control the low end and make it sound a little bit tighter. And then on our mids, a 10 millisecond attack with a fast release. And again, just some light compression in the mid-range just to grab hold of things when they start to poke through. And on our low band, that's 140 hertz down. And then everything in between that up to 4.5K is getting compressed in the mid-range. And then on our high band, anything above 4.5K, we're compressing and we have a fairly fast attack. So we want this one to really grab those harsh sounds that come through. And then a fairly quick release. It's not the fastest either, so it's going to give us a little bit of grab on the sound. I've got the mix knob on this dialed back to 76%. And you can hear it really makes the mix sound a lot clearer and a lot punchier.
Awake with my eyes still shut. To every small thing, this world fucks me up. So I remind myself to blink and take a breath before you think that this is easy.
So you can see if our high end was a problem, we could compress that harder and pull that back into the mix a bit more.
Believe me, I wish. Forget everything that I said. Pick back up from right where we left. Erase these thoughts stuck in my head. So pick
we could compress those lows a little bit harder and then pump them up a little bit with the makeup gain. And that'll make the low end sound really tight.
Forget everything that I said. Back over right where we left. Erase these thoughts stuck in my head, so we can all just move ahead. Forget everything that I said. Back over right where we left. Erase these thoughts stuck in my head, so we can all just move ahead.
So you can see how powerful that is on the mix bus. You can really change the overall tone of the mix. You can make things sound tighter, you can make things sound warmer, you can make things sound brighter and more exciting. It's really a powerful tool for shaping your overall mix. Do you need to use multiband compression in every mix that you ever do? No. There's definitely mixes where I don't even use any multiband compression. It just comes back to whether you feel like you need to apply it in certain instances like I've demonstrated, because there's no point just chucking it in because someone said in a video, this is how you use multiband compression. Just use it if you think it needs to be used. If you think it's going to help enhance the mix, then chuck it in there and see how it goes. If you're mastering a song and the low end's just like out of control, it's just like too flabby and bassy, try chucking a multiband compression on there and compress those lows, see if that helps. If you've got a lot of like bright cymbals and airy stuff coming through in and out, compress those high frequencies in the mix and see if it makes the high end sound a little bit smoother. So on this mix, I have another instance of multiband compression on the mix bus, and this one is using the Waves C6. You can do this with Pro MB, doesn't really matter. I think what I like about the C6 is you can make a really tight band. So I've got this little band focus at around 165 Hertz. It's just like a little bit of build up, a little bit of muddiness that is coming in on the mix. And I don't necessarily want to just do a static cut with the EQ. I just want to like massage this frequency range a little bit just to help anything that's sort of jumping out get tucked back in at times. Got a fast attack, pretty standard release. I'm pretty sure that's just like the default release time. It sounded fine. And then we're doing 1.5 dBs. It's not a lot, but it's going to help. And on the mix bus, you kind of have to be careful not to go too aggressive because even like 1.5 dBs can make a really big difference to a mix.
So I remind myself to blink and take a breath before you think that this is easy. Believe me, I wish. Forget everything that I said. Back over right where we left.
So even little moves like that on the mix bus with some multiband compression can really tighten the sound of your mix up. Now I'll finish up with one more trick with multiband compression, and that is removing squeaks and string noise from guitars. So have a listen to this. We've got a really squeaky sound on this guitar. So that really loud sound. Sometimes that sounds fine, it adds a human element, but sometimes it can be kind of distracting in a mix. So what we've got is multiband compression. Very similar again to our de-esser and our snare bleed settings. We have a high shelf and I pushed it all the way down to minus 30 dBs. Using the full range of what we've got here, fast attack, fast release, we've got it set to free mode, and then we're using the detector to find where the squeak in the guitar is so that when that squeak comes through, this is going to compress the signal right down and push that squeak right out of the way. Now we also need to do a little bit of automation so that this doesn't compress the rest of the guitar while it's going, because there are frequencies that will start to push this down and we don't want that to happen. So you can have a look back here. I've got some automation going on our guitar tracks, and that is just automating the threshold down. So watch the threshold as this plays over and you'll see it jump down and compress the signal, and then it jumps back up so we don't get any other compression happening. Pretty sneaky, right? Let's hear it again without it. So massive difference. And then in the mix with everything going on, if you've got vocals over the top, it's like it doesn't exist anymore.
I hope that once I get there, I'll know. Hope that once I get there, I'll know. There, I'll know.
Wouldn't even know it's there if I wasn't showing it to you. But before, it was a distracting little squeak sound. So that's just another awesome way of using multiband compression to deal with another issue that you might come across in your mixes. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned a couple of new tricks that you can use with multiband compression that you can start applying to your mixes. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, check out the description link below. Check out my website. I've got a range of drum samples, got a couple of mix courses up over there. Grabbing any of those is a massive support for the time that goes into making content like this. Also, make sure you check out any of the affiliate links below if you buy your gear through Sweetwater. using that link below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but a small commission comes back to the channel, and that's a great way of saying thanks for the content that gets made. As well as check out any of the plugin companies that I'm affiliated with below. Buying plugins through those links helps support this channel as well. If you're looking for ways to advance your mixing skills, maybe check out this pop country mix course that I put together.
'Cause I'm awake with my eyes still shut. Every smile